Poke the Bear is brought to you by Prize Picks and the Game Time app.
And welcome into Poke the Bear, episode 272, presented by Prize Picks and Game Time Tickets. My name is Conor Ryan. And once again, we are joined by the esteemed Doom Anderson. Doom, how are you? Oh, and Ty is also here as well. Doom's busy right now, but Ty, I guess, how you doing? What's up?
I'm doing great. Myself and Victoria Von Doom, there she is at Castle Doom,
Yes.
just doing her thing. She'll jump down at some point, so that'll be fun. We'll all get startled. It'll be great. Doing all right. I think I'm doing better than the local hockey team, and I say that mainly because things are not going well this week. It would appear for those guys.
Yeah, I would say the vibes are slightly off, and maybe that is putting it lightly. I think you could say disarray, dysfunction. Maybe not as bad as the team in Foxborough. That is a complete dumpster fire. But in terms of expectations for the Bruins, and looking at where we were viewing this team and what they could achieve, and again, knowing full well it is still, last I checked, October. You still have plenty of time to right the ship, but Thursday's 5-2 loss to Dallas. When you look at the trends that have popped up, especially on that trip out west, Montgomery's message on Thursday morning talking about got to cut down the penalties, got to cut down the giveaways. Very frustrating to see. Again, it's the same things continue to pop up. It's like we're writing the same things, we're talking about the same things because the same flaws aren't being corrected night in and night out with this team.
Oh, 100%. I mean, geez, it's such a bad look that, you talk about the giveaways, you talk about the penalties, and then in the first, 24 minutes of that game Thursday night, they have like 15 giveaways and 4 penalties. It's like, okay, so what's not getting through here? And, in past years, I think this team has had sort of the talent and the veteran savvy to maybe minimize those problems, those concerns, but they don't really have that right now. And I think what's really damning is, and I understand this has been skewed by the last 2 games. You lose by 3 goals on Thursday night, you lose by 4 goals on Tuesday night, but their goal differential, it's the 4th worst in the conference. So the only teams that have been worse than you in terms of goal differential are Pittsburgh, Montreal, and Philadelphia. Those are not 3 teams that you want to be next to, in 2024-25. And so I just think that it's really uncharacteristic, right? And you watch this team and you kind of have this feeling of they just need a bounce to go their way and they're off for the races, right? But then you get the Brazeau goal, make it 4-2, and then more penalties, more giveaways, and it's like, you're not going to win the game. You're not going to win games doing that. It just feels like you're waiting for a switch to kind of flip. But I'm wondering, okay, how many switches can they really flip? How many guys you can look at and say, he can be a lot better? And I think there's 3 or 4, but other than that, it might be they got to change how they win games. They got to be more of a grind team than a, dipsy do, we're going to win 5-4 kind of game. I think they might have to go to that early, in my opinion.
Yeah, when you look at the issues with this team, and you can point at, I think there's very concrete, we've already talked about it, whether it's the penalties, whether it's the first 2 games, it was the net front coverage wasn't all that sharp, and I don't really think that's maybe a pressing issue now, but penalties, scoring, shot volume's way down, the quality of the shots aren't there. These are all things that we've already examined quite a bit. Do you think some of it has to do, and also we've discussed just the construction of the roster, right? And you can make the argument there's just too many bottom 6 guys in elevator roles that aren't kind of pulling their weight. But
they're
do you
plotting,
also,
Connor?
Yeah.
They are plottingly slow at times.
Do you think this is more of the state of the roster and this is what they are, or do you think it's also more of an identity thing and trying to figure out what exactly they are? You saw it, I think, early in those games against Florida, where it seemed like their mindset was so fixated on we got to be this imposing team and settle the score with Florida. Maybe those Florida games just broke their brain in terms of what they needed to do, but it does feel like they're trying to find out what kind of team they are, and that's going to lead to these growing pains and these games where you're don't really know what to make of what this roster is. But do you think it's more of an identity crisis, or is it more of this roster's got some issues with it that I don't know if a puck going your way is necessarily going to fix it.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And I thought that it was after the game in Nashville on Nesson's post game, Billy Jaffe and Barry Peterson, two guys that I think are very measured in terms of how they analyze the team and slumps and funks and all of that. Like, they kind of said what I've kind of been feeling, where like the vibe of this team feels off. There's just something that feels weirdly missing, and that's weird, Connor, because I didn't feel that last year. They lose Krejci, they lose Bergeron, they bring in a bunch of patchwork, hardworking veteran types, and they overachieved, and they were great. Pretty much all year, you're like, wow, this machine is humming along.
Yeah.
How is it doing this? And I don't know, maybe this year there's like an expectation that they should win based on the money they spent. I would say they signed the best center available and they signed the best left shot D available. And then you keep the franchise goalie. But there's some funk, there's some vibe. Something just feels off, right? And maybe that's, to your point, identity. Like, do they not know who they are? Are they still trying to figure that out? Like, I'll give time for that. I understand that, but I'm just not seeing the messaging that is being stated publicly. I'm not seeing that being executed on the ice. Like we said off the jump. Montgomery's talked about the penalties, the giveaways, the not working hard enough, not understanding that you got to compete for 60 minutes to win a hockey game in the NHL. He's talked about all of that. We haven't seen it play out on the ice. They still, in my opinion, don't have a 60-minute effort. They were lucky that Georgiev's as bad as he is, and they were spotted, 5 goals for 40 minutes, whatever it was. I mean, or 4 goals, if they don't get that, like, that game is tight. That game's tight to the final wire. And so, I think that's like, I'm just not seeing the action follow the words right now with that team. And that's kind of weird for them.
Yeah. And I also think you look at it, right, and McAvoy mentioned this after Thursday's game of like last 2 years we were gangbusters, and he mentioned like, you don't really win anything for being the best team in October, which is true. I think if you're any team, you'd rather be playing your best hockey in April, May, and hopefully June. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But from maybe the flip side of that same coin, how much of a lift is it though when you're getting results right away and you're building that momentum, right? Like, you look at the belief early on and how much that can galvanize a team. You look like 2 years ago when they had the record-setting year, and I think people thought they were going to be good, but it wasn't a slam dunk like this team's a friggin' wagon. Like, it was a lot of like, I think it was like us talking about of like pieces in place. Like, this team actually could surprise a lot of people, and all of a sudden they go 17-0-2 or something to start the year, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you're like, all right, guys are feeling good about their game. Everyone's locking in. And then you look at last year where people had no idea what to expect. You got this Moneyball kind of roster. You're losing these guys, but then you start the year. What were they, like 14-3-1 or something like that? And I think that that might be downplaying it. All of a sudden, all these questions you have about like, all right, we got JVR in a top 6 spot. Let's see what it is. Oh shit, we're winning games. All right, we're feeling good. Like, again, that's something too where yes, you'd want to be playing your best hockey in the springtime. But when you're a team that has so many moving pieces and there are going to be growing pains, it gets negated, or you don't have to worry about it as much if you're stacking wins together as well. Like, the fact that I think this team's in a rut, not saying they can't climb out of it, but I also don't think you can look at, what were the Oilers last year? Like 5-12 or something to start the year. Right. They also had guys where you're like, all right, we also have Connor McDavid. We'll get our shit in order. You look at like the Panthers 2 years ago when they were, I think I looked at their record. It was like 16-17-4, I think, at the end of December. So look at that team like, well, like Bobrovsky's kind of up and down, but we still got Kachuk and all these guys. We're going to be good. We'll sort our shit out. This team, it's like, all right, we got all these moving pieces. We're struggling to find our game. Like, all right, who's going to step up? Like, I do think like the psychological or just the momentum generated from a strong stat, when you have so many new guys on the roster, it is something that you're able to build off of, and that also hasn't gone their way yet as well.
100%. And I think, I don't think we're going to get a true read on this team in terms of what they can be or what they are until I would say about 15 to 20 games in. That's typically when I start going, okay, this guy's having a bad year. Or, oh, okay, this guy is not, he's not where he's got to be. And, like they're at that halfway point of that kind of number right now. And I think what's really interesting, or what's kind of like what's got to change for them, is you got Coyle, you got Geeky, Marchand, Zaka, Frederick, all not playing to their level, a year ago. Are they those guys full time? That's a debate. I understand that. But out of the gate here, those 5 players I just mentioned have a combined 3 goals on 72 shots. They're shooting 4%. That's probably not going to hold. Like, odds are that's not going to hold. There's going to be an uptick there. You're going to see Frederick on one of those things where he scores 4 goals in 5 games, just basically just by going to the front of the net, like just driving play and tipping it, whatever. Like, you're going to see that. It's going to happen. It's just, can you weather the storm until then, right? And I think with certain guys, like I don't know if Charlie Coyle is a 60-point guy regularly. I don't know if that opportunity is going to be there for him like it was a year ago. I think Zaka can give you that. I think Marchand, if with the right line mates, can give you 30 goals still. But right now, those guys are kind of firing blanks right now. Morgan Geeky, let's not forget, he was kind of until about Black Friday last year. Yeah. And then he was off to the races. He was one of the best scorers in the NHL from that point on for like 2.5 months. It was kind of wild. He was like top 50, I think, in points for a stretch there. So, that's really sort of like, can those guys snap out of it? The odds are yes. But if they can't, and if they're not what they were a year ago, what do? I don't know how many bullets you have in your chamber here if you're Don Sweeney.
Yeah, and we will discuss that in terms of what the next steps are coming out of this break. But before we do that, Tyler, let's take a quick break. Hear from our good friends over at Prize Picks. Fall is finally here. You know what that means. Football season is back. And there's so many ways for you to get in on the action and win up to 100 times your cash on Prize Picks, as you and the world's best players take the game to a new level on the gridiron, ice, court, and much more. Prize Picks is the best way to win real money this football season. Which players are going off? Which ones aren't? Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinions into real money all season long on Prize Picks. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. Every Tuesday, Prize Picks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineups. Prize Picks is also the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy so that your lineups stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. If your player leaves in the first half and doesn't return, Prize Picks makes sure that your picks are still live. There's really no shortage of ways to participate in Prize Picks, especially during football season. This week, I'm picking Justin Jefferson for more than 83.5 receiving yards and Patrick Mahomes for less than 267.5 passing yards. It's really that easy. So download the PrizePicks app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks. Run your game. Now, let's get back to the show. Shout out once again to our good friends over at Prize Picks. Ty, you mentioned it earlier in the episode about the messaging and what is and isn't getting across to this team based on what we've seen so far. Not a whole lot seems to be registering with this team in terms of the urgency being preached by Jim Montgomery. You're seeing the lines getting jumbled up every single game. Not really any results there. It's been discussed quite a bit already in terms of Montgomery and, whether he's on the hot seat or not. But when you factor in it feels like the urgency right now, we are in October. We don't have the Christmas ads up yet. Target hasn't put up the tinsel yet in all the department stores, but you're seeing like Montgomery change the lines as if it's going into game 4 of a 7-game series where the offense is stagnating, right? Like when you look at the urgency from the head coach, the contract status, and the lack of at least tangible response yet from the players on the ice, how legitimate is it that you think we're getting to that territory of like, so I'm going to go on here because it does feel like we're seeing signs of that, like the breadcrumbs of what leads to a change happening if they don't right the ship.
Yeah, I think the only past experience that this regime has with that is Claude Julien in 2017 in terms of in-season maneuvering. So if we use that data and we use that experience in the past, like they're going to let it play out some. I think they may be able to get away with that with the Atlantic. It doesn't look like there's like a true powerhouse in the Atlantic right now that like you're going to be so worried about falling out of playoff positioning. I don't think that's a legit issue for this team, to be honest with you. But no, I think that there's like they got to be mindful here of like, okay, let's say you fire the coach. Okay, let's say you get that 5-game bump. Do you think that's what's really like that's what it is? Like now I think it's talent. Personally, I don't think that they are icing the best version of their possible roster. I don't feel that way. I think Tyler Johnson should be signed. I would waive Riley Tufte or Max Jones. I don't think you're gonna get a claim on either one of those guys. But like they're not icing the best version of their roster, and so I think there is an element here of like the roster is what it is, right? But is there also an element here of Montgomery saying, look I got Max Jones as a second line left wing right now. I got Riley Tufte as my first guy in when I want to send a message. I got it like I just wonder if we should really be blaming the coach all that much. They got slower. After saying they wanted to get faster, they got slower. They got bigger. That's great, but they are plotting and they are not throwing in their speed options. Tyler Johnson being one. Fabian Lysell, whom we've talked about a lot on this podcast, both good and bad, is not here. Like they are slow. And so that's a problem for them. It's been a problem. And so I'm mindful of doing this now, firing him now. And then it's like, okay, you won 4 out of 5, and then you went right back to being who you were. Like, I think that might be an issue here as well. And so, but it's a story. It's a story until it's not. They have decided to go into the year with a lame duck head coach. They have decided to bring in Jay Leach, whom they love organizationally. And so here we are. I'd be more patient than others, but sometimes it just feels inevitable, and it kind of feels inevitable at this point. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, and again, it comes down to if the Bruins have to, be fully aware going into this year that this was going to now be a narrative. Like you can't go into the year with a lame duck coach who, again, like playoff results are what they are, but like regular season has been impressive in terms of what he's done here so far. To again have Sweeney mention like, yeah, we're having contract negotiations. That's all well and good. He also said that Bruce Cassidy was got the seal of approval, then he got fired
Right.
2 weeks later. Like there's also that. So you can say you're working on a contract, but and it's one thing. Don Sweeney can say they're working on a contract. Jim Montgomery back in September said that he can operate just fine without clarity on his future.
But can he?
Yes, exactly. Like you are only human, and I don't think anyone likes being in a spot where they just don't know what the years ahead are going to be. Like everyone is wired that way, and I think that's why you're seeing also that urgency of it's not just Montgomery and his status, but also like you harken back to that season opening press conference, like based on what Neely was saying, like they were fully expecting to build off of last year and be in the picture and think that they're well equipped. So you have the pressure from top management. You have this uncertain status with your contract. Like, no shit, you're going to be reshuffling the lines and you're going to be doing all these things and getting on Marchand, for that turnover and all these things that you're seeing that you're like, doesn't feel like a guy who's, well aware knowing that he's got a contract. He's got to just wait to sign it in a couple of weeks. Like you can see, I think the urgency and desperation there. And again, it may not all fall on him. It may be, as you said, a byproduct of what this roster is and the shortcomings that maybe have been more magnified than we thought they were going to be. But yeah, you're just seeing, I think, like the breadcrumbs of where this could lead to if they don't right the ship. Because again, when you look at, they can make some moves, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on. But if you're looking for something drastic, what is it always in the NHL? It's the coach.
It's the coach.
That's usually how it is.
And I think he's like the 8th longest tenured head coach in the league right now. So do the math. It's might be his time, in terms of how these things go. And I sound, I'm a stuttering, blabbering fool when I talk about this because I want to choose my words very carefully. And because I don't think, like, there are things that Jim Montgomery does that I'm not crazy about. But I also think that I look at this roster and I'm going, he only has so many ways he can spin this around and make it so with the current construct and their current cap situation, all of that. But let's run through it real quick. He calls up the top 6 after the fourth game of the year.
Yeah.
He's in a shouting match and he gives a little shove, which was way overblown, by the way, to his captain. Mm-hmm. He's trying out a billion different combos, it feels like. And he keeps saying the same thing in press conferences, but we're not seeing it executed properly by the players on the ice. Jim Montgomery cannot play the game. He can say all the right things. He can scheme it up, but it's got to be played. And if the message isn't getting through, and I think he's a really smart guy, but I think his rah-rah is maybe a little bit more potent than his tactician abilities.
Yeah.
But if the rah-rah isn't getting through, okay, well, what are we doing here? And so there's that part of it as well. And I just think that I just look at it and I'm like, I remember covering the Bruins in 2016-17 when they fired Claude Julien. And I think it was sometime around, I want to say November or December, where Claude hit the point where he just went, listen, I know what's going on. He's like, I want to be here. I want to be part of the solution. I don't want to be the problem. I'm kind of waiting for one of those press conferences, right? Where like Montgomery's like, listen, man, I'm trying. I want to be here, but I don't got a contract. I know that the Grim Reaper's there on my bench with me. Yeah. Like, nothing's gonna say that kind of stuff, but there are stages to when a coach gets fired, right? And a coach loses the room or whatever. We've seen a couple of them. We got to see a few more before I'm like, ooh, this is gonna happen for sure.
Yeah, and I think also to what you say of him being a rah-rah guy, you can, I think, hop on the line juggling or how you plan once you get to the playoffs and stuff like that, which I think was obviously the critical flaw 2 years ago. But to be the rah-rah and get guys to buy in, it also, again, falls on the players. You can't have Marchand and Pastrnak taking shitty penalties in a game when, you look at that third period where they were actually putting together some good shifts in the offensive zone. That was like a filter going on there. Wow. But you look at it, right? In that game, they had some momentum early on in that third, and then bad penalty. And what do you know? Saps all the momentum away. That's not tactician. That's not him losing control or letting a game slip away, or they're blowing third period leads or stuff like that. It's your players themselves aren't executing, as Zoom is about to chime in there.
Yeah, she got thoughts.
Yes.
No, but I think that, yeah, 100%. And the other part of it, and so I'm sitting here going, I don't love the options they throw in. I don't love Riley Tufte and Max Jones and even Wotherspoon, who I like a lot, jumping in and committing penalties at an insane clip where you're like, okay, you can't do that, man. You just can't do it. However, when he scratched Mason Lohrei for the home opener, I thought Lohrei came back and played with his hair on fire and was a value add piece for about 3 or 4 games in a row. Justin Brazeau is scratched in Nashville. He threw him back in last night. I thought he was excellent in Thursday's game against Dallas. He thought he was their most impactful forward in terms of creating chances, generating looks, all of that. So, it's weird, right? Because the guys he's scratching, the message seems to get through when they're back on the lineup. So, for me, it's he's lost the room. No, he hasn't, because those guys would come back in and play like crap. They wouldn't play well if he completely lost the room. And so it's so hard to get a read on this. And that's why I think patience has to be the name of the game here. I mentioned the guys that aren't scoring, right? Another part of it, Swayman's posted a 904, through 6 games so far. He can be better. He will be better. And so I think that the Bruins, if I'm the Bruins, or if I'm getting a read on their situation, I think they're mindful of that. I think they're mindful of not making a rash decision here until they get a better, maybe more complete scope of what this team's limitations truly are.
Yeah, no, exactly. I think there has to be patience. Anyone thinking that I think drastic moves are going to happen from the coaching angle, at least in the next couple of weeks, I think you got to let this play out a little bit more. But
well, I mean, sorry to cut you off.
Yeah,
Like
no.
in 2009, the Bruins, they didn't like their start, and Peter Chiarelli said, "You know what? I don't like what I see here." He traded Chuck Kobasu, a guy who had a good year the year before, but he was like, "I don't like this. I'm sending a message." He traded Chuck Kobasu. He acquired Danny Paille, and that year was disjointed. It was weird. They got in on game 82, but like as a GM, Chiarelli noticed right away. He's like, something
Something's
ain't
off.
right, and I'm sending a message right now. And it didn't fix everything, but like there are other moves you can make to send a message. Remember when Sweeney's closest brush with this, in my opinion, was remember when Emil Bemstrom wrecked Tuukka Rask
Yes.
and knocked him out of the game? Remember what happened the next day? Brett Ritchie hit waivers because they didn't respond the way that they wanted to respond. And Brett Ritchie was a sacrificial lamb.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't his job. He wasn't an enforcer. He never was that guy. But they were like, you know what? That's bullshit. We don't like that. We're waiving Brett Ritchie. Like there are other moves you can make. It's just, do you do it and when do you do it?
Yeah, no, exactly. So we will see if maybe some moves are done, especially up front. And we'll kind of focus in on that to round out this episode. But before we do that, Ty, let's take another quick break here from our friends over at Game Time Tickets. Rejoice, sports fans, because basketball season is finally back. And if you're a Celtics fan and want to watch the defending champs on the parquet floor, you got to go with Game Time Tickets. There's nothing better than posting up with your buddies at the Garden for a Celtics game, escaping the cold weather, knocking back a few beers, and cheering with the crowd over every Jaylen Brown slam and Jason Tatum three-pointer. And with the new Celtics season upon us, now is your time to see this stacked roster in action, and Game Time Tickets will get you the best seats at the best prices to get you into the Garden. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and the lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. Want to see the Celtics take on Steve Kerr and the Warriors in November? How about a Christmas Day game against the 76ers? Game Time Tickets has you covered. Game Time Tickets app makes it easy to sort through which specific game, concert, or other event you want to attend and shows you the best spots available to take in the action. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Game Time Tickets also has you covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry, including event cancellation protection, 24-hour returns guarantee, job loss assurance, and on-time ticket delivery. So what are you waiting for? Take the guesswork out of buying basketball tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Now, let's get back to the show. Shout out once again to our good friends over at Game Time Tickets. All right, Ty, looking at the current state of the roster, obviously there's a few tweaks that it seems like they're in the process of doing. Riley Tufte just hit waivers, so he's either going to get claimed or head down to Providence. You've got Matt Patra skating in a top 6 role, I believe, in practice on Friday as well. It does seem like, again, to your previous point about you got to look at what you have on the roster and what moves you can make. It does feel like some other dominoes are going to fall here in terms of trying to get a little more of a scoring punch, especially with Tufte getting waived.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first option here is probably Tyler Johnson. I imagine they're going to sign him probably to a league minimum contract. I don't think they can afford much more than that. He is, I believe, well, he's 34, so I don't think he can do the 35 plus contract yet, obviously. But and then if Johnson doesn't work out, okay, now you're looking at probably Fabian Lysell, Riley Duran, Trevor Kuntar, somebody like that. But I think they realize like you got to do something. I think that, and this is not to, I feel bad too. Like I always find like as a writer, as an analyst, I think it's kind of weak sauce to like crush a guy who's like a two-way player. I'm sorry, like a two-way contract, bottom of the roster guy like Riley Tufte. But like, if you need more offense, you can't rely on him. Like you gotta give out, you gotta put a better option out there. And so I think it starts with Tyler Johnson. If that doesn't work, then you have to look at Providence. But I like Tyler Johnson, but he's not the savior, right? Like he's a nice supporting piece. But I think they are noticing like what we're talking about. They're slow, they're plodding, their power plays ineffective. Johnson brings that veteran know-how. You look at his year last year, 17 goals. Majority of his work was on the power play in terms of his damage that he inflicted. So you bring him in and you hope that works. And I think that's where they should go with that. And so I expect that to now follow almost immediately.
Yeah. I mean, I do think you look at what Johnson can provide, at least give you something there. I think you're missing just that extra playmaking touch. As you said, I don't think you're expecting him to be the guy he was even last year with his, the production maybe, but just a guy that's crafty, can make kind of the smart, simple plays, even the stuff that doesn't register on the score sheet. Like he had a nice screen, I think that set up, I think it was Lysell's goal in the preseason.
Oh yeah, beautiful screen. Yeah.
I think he won a puck battle along the boards that I think sprung Merkulov for that. I think it was a Brazeau goal as well.
Brazeau, yep. Yeah, he made a great play right over the his own blue line to spring that to get them going there. I think he was actually off the ice when the goal was scored. I think like he went for a line change, but no, that happens because of him. He had another one in like the dress rehearsal game against Philly. He had a great play as well. And so, bring him in. I'm cool with it. But like, this is what we're talking about, right? Like, so things are going bad. So your best case scenario here is Tyler Johnson. Like, that's why it's hard for me to crush the coach. This is the roster. It is what it is.
Yeah. And I think you also need to see if guys like Lysell can continue to stack, strong performances. Had a pretty quiet first weekend and then had a goal and assist, I believe, the second weekend against Springfield. But you need to see more from him to get him back in that conversation, because that's what we talked about. Like, as much as he's up and down, the skill is there, the speed, all these things. Like, that's a guy that the Bruins want Lysell to be making a push there. And I think if he continues to put up good numbers, got to give him a shot. Like, again, not to pile in on, Tufte and Max Jones and these guys, but if you're going to keep on rolling those guys out there like they were when they're committing ozone penalties, you can't, bury a guy in Providence for an occasional miscue. It's like, also like, remember like in training camp, Martian's like, well, you can dangle through three guys, but if you're not going to, you're going to turn over the puck and take penalties, then you're not going to be up here. Well, the guys on the NHL roster are doing that right now. So maybe bring in the guy who actually can dangle through players and see what you have in them, right? I'm not saying Fabian Lysell is the next Martian, but I think you look at the Bruins and how they approach things. They want you to be not a finished product, but a really solid, can hold their own in every phase of the game. Sometimes maybe it's about leaning into a guy's strengths, especially when you're really deficient in what they're good at. Benefit from it and let them round out their game and find their footing at the next level. Maybe that's what the case is. Like, they also have guys like that on the roster right now. Like Nikita Zadorov, what his skill is. You know where his strengths lie, but you also fully aware that sometimes it's going to lead to him being out of position or taking a shitty penalty or something like that. You roll with the punches. If a guy like Lysell, you don't know what you have yet, give him a look and see what he can do.
Yeah, I feel the same way. And, I think that it's telling that Lysell does not, will you get out of here? Jesus. Does not score in his first 2 games of the AHL season, but he's since responded with a goal and an assist. He's got to continue to build on that. But, I think Don Sweeney has used the term overbaked before in terms of like, you want your guys to be completely ready. It's not going to happen. Like, you got to bring these guys along, because if you're going to sit here and go, we're not going to call a guy up until he's completely finished product, like, okay, then you're never going to call anybody up. So just sign free agents forever. And so I think this team, where they are right now, being this early in the season, like, they have a pocket here. They have a window here where like they can take a chance, like, and try to bring them along. This schedule is hard out of the gate. Yeah. It softens up a little bit. But I think if he continues to produce and to put points on the board while you got a bunch of guys up here that can't get on the board, like, you got to make that call, man. Like, sometimes you got to live with it. Listen, and I feel ridiculous comparing this player to or Lysell to these guys, but like, did the Canadiens love Alex Kovalev in every aspect of his game? No, but he could score and he was talented. And sometimes you gotta, if you got 10 muckers, I think you can fit a guy in who's an unfinished product and try to put him in advantageous situations where he can score. And so I just look at this team right now and say, like, you should not turn away talent that can create offense right now. You shouldn't do that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I do think you look at Johnson's probably the first step there, but ideally, if a guy like Lysell continues to stack performances or your offense continues to slump, I think he's probably the next guy up as well, because you got to find other ways to inject some more skill in this lineup. So,
for the record, I'm not saying that Lysell is Kovalev. I'm just saying.
Oh, we already clipped it. We're going to fire it off in about 5 minutes.
Not every player is going to be Patrice Bergeron. I'm sorry. It'd be awesome, but it's not going to work out like that, man. It's just not going to happen. I'm sorry.
That's like when we had that podcast episode where I scheduled a video. I scheduled like the tweet, like 5 minutes. It was me being like, Jeremy Swayman needs to get to the bargaining table, get this thing done. And it was like 5 minutes after he signed.
I got to use
on a golf course
Walter
when
White.
that happened. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
I was on a golf course when that happened, and I was just like, "Oh, what's this, Walter White? Oh, shit!"
So you weren't at practice today, so you missed this. I opened up Instagram, and let me tell you,
was it face?
No, I love Limp Bizkit. All right, you can clip that. You can put that everywhere. I love Limp Bizkit.
Okay.
So I get a lot of Limp Bizkit memes on my my Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
I opened up Instagram and I forgot to turn my volume off. I'm so happy that Jim Montgomery is not in the room, because all of a sudden it's just, ladies and gentlemen, and I was like, oh my God. I was like, how did that happen? I was just so ashamed.
Dude, it's still not as bad as the yakety sacks we've talked about this before. I don't know if this has been talked about on the podcast, but it was Game 3 of the 19 Eastern Conference Finals. We're both down in Raleigh. Bruins win that game. Carolina, I think, must have had like 25 shots on goal in the first period. Didn't score. Rask was awesome in that game. Takes all the momentum away. Rod Brind'Amour despondent afterwards, down 0-3. Pretty much being like, yeah, we're done. Like, we did our best. We pushed. And then some cameraman's phone started ringing in the press conference, and it's yakety sacks. And so it's like just grim, sad Brind'Amour as yakety sacks is blasting. And it went on for like 10 seconds. It wasn't like, and you panic and you panic and you smash your phone or do that. Like, it was running for a while. That I think everyone had to like take a minute to register like what curb episode we all found ourselves in. So it always could have been worse, Ty.
Brind'Amour is like a top 3 coach for that to happen to.
Oh yes.
I wish it was Tortorella though so badly, because that would have been unbelievable.
I mean, that camera would have been deceased.
Oh yeah, it would have been thrown through the building.
Yeah.
It's like Hulk and Avengers basically kind of stuff would have happened.
It actually, he probably even been mad. He would have been it just flips the table and leaves. That's what would happen. But
there was a clip where that did happen, where a reporter's phone went off, and Tortorella just goes, "That to me, that's just ridiculous." But if it was yakety sacks and he was talking about how his team was going to get swept, oh my god, it would have been unbelievable.
Trip to the Stanley Cup on. I think that was a Terry Francona thing too. I believe that was something that he hated. People's like, it was probably back when it was gigantic Motorola's, where you probably like had to click through like 5 menus to silence your phone anyway. That he would, I think, hate it when people's cell phones would go off. So
yeah, he did. Yeah, he was also. There are people that have not weird, but there are people that say like Tito, not always the nicest guy to deal with in certain respects.
Yes. So yeah, didn't have as much of the highlight reel of John Tortorella, which I can.
Yeah, I don't think Tito ever challenged like Sean McAdams like a fist fight.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
I don't think he ever did that.
Yeah.
By the way, have you watched this? Have you watched this Netflix documentary on the 04 Red Sox?
No, not yet. I have to get around to doing it though, because I think I've mentioned this before, but I believe there's 25 to 50 documentaries about the 04 Red Sox, and I will watch every single one of them.
This one's really good. I did the first episode, but what I love is that your colleague, Dan Shaughnessy, I think it's his home office or something. It's just books all behind him. And then it's just the way he's sitting. You just see his sneakers. He's like wearing a suit with sneakers. I'm like, Dan, not going to change for anybody, huh? Just he's going to do his thing forever.
Just rolls with the punches. I respect it. That's how it should be, right?
Oh, Francesa's in it too, so that's fun.
Oh, hell yeah. Star of the film Uncut Gems. Most random appearance. Mike Francesa is like a bookie in that movie. So why I don't know, but the real cameo is not Kevin Garnett. It's Mike Francesa being a bookie. But
I do love that clip of that caller being like, how can he win the Triple Crown, Mike? He's not a horse. He's like, so unamusing.
Yes. Exactly. Ty, great talking hockey with you once again. We'll do it again next week. Before we let you go,
we'll do it again tomorrow at the Garden. What are you talking about? We'll be sitting next to each other.
True. We should just do like a live stream of it. That'd be the most everyone would immediately stop watching because all of us would just be like, "Oh, do you see this Limp Bizkit meme?" It would have nothing to do with hockey.
Well, that happened the other night because Thursday night we're just sitting there and I just went, "Fuck, I want a hot dog." just stream of consciousness out of my brain at all times.
That's what happens when the Bruins are unfortunately not really submitting. It's not even the fact they're losing, not really submitting riveting games as well. It's not like brutal. I always say it's like, like when the Lions were bad, like in Dan Campbell's first year, but they were like losing 38-35. You're like, this is kind of fun. Like, no, they're right now it's very plodding. So we'll see if the entertainment factor jumps up a little bit, which hopefully it does on Saturday when the Maple Leafs come to town. But Ty, before we let you go, where can we read your stuff? Where can we hear you on the radio waves? All that.
Yeah, so you can hear me every Saturday morning hosting the hockey show on 98.5 The Sports Hub. You can also hear me on the podcast I do with Matt Dolph, the Sports Hub Underground. You can read all my stuff, 98.5sportshub.com, and pretty much anywhere else for that matter. Anywhere you Google my name and it'll come up in some fashion. So that's where you can find me at _ Ty Anderson on social medias as well. So yeah, that's where I can be found. How about yourself?
Yeah, you can find me over at boston.com and the Boston Globe. I've covered every step of the way with recaps, features, columns, breakdowns, all that good stuff throughout the year. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, you can at Conor Ryan _93. This was episode 272 of Poke the Bear. I'm Conor Ryan. That's Ty Anderson and Doom. You fans have a great rest of your week.